Welcome to This Explainer, where we're tackling a pretty fascinating language mystery today. Have you ever wondered why intermediate and advanced English speakers, those folks sitting comfortably at that B2 level, can communicate perfectly fine, yet somehow still sound, well, translated? Today, we're going to explore exactly why that happens, and more importantly, how you can finally bridge that gap between just being understandable and sounding completely effortlessly natural.
Okay, let's take a quick look at how we're breaking this down. We'll start with the B2 plateau, move into the verb trap, navigate nouns and adjectives, look at tenses and time periods, decode the logic of English questions, and finally, learn how to think in patterns. We're going to systematically cross off the biggest translation hurdles holding back your fluency.
Right? Let's kick things off with Section 1, the B2 plateau, or what happens when fluency just doesn't sound natural.
So the crucial thing to understand here is that the barrier to sounding natural isn't some insanely complex grammar rule. It's actually just a collection of tiny, persistent errors. I mean, things like putting an adjective where an adverb belongs, or accidentally using Russian word order in an English question. Now, they aren't massive communication breakdowns,
Sure.
but they act as this subtle alarm bell that immediately marks you as a translated speaker. And honestly, this is exactly what might be secretly holding you back in your next big job interview or explaining why your jokes just aren't quite landing with native speakers.
And this brings us to the core of the issue, literal translation. It's that habit of swapping words one for one between your native language and English. This is the exact trap we're escaping today. Because, constantly asking yourself, wait, what is the exact English word for this specific Russian word? It almost always leads you down the completely wrong path.
Moving on to Section 2, the verb trap. These are the verbs that absolutely do not translate word for word.
Okay, this brings us to the concept of light verbs. English loves to use verbs like make, do, give, have, take, and get. And here's the kicker. In these phrases, the verb itself carries almost zero meaning. The actual core meaning lives in the noun right next to it. So things like making a mistake or taking a break, they literally have to be learned as complete, inseparable blocks. You just can't mix and match.
And this brilliantly illustrates our point. In Russian, you might say читать лекцию, which translates literally to read a lecture. But if you tell an English speaker he reads lectures, they're going to literally picture a guy standing at a podium awkwardly reading a piece of paper out loud to a room. To sound natural, you just have to say, he gives lectures.
Another massive trap is the Russian word delit. Because it covers such a wide range of actions, your instinct is probably to just use the English word do for everything. But you really have to split these concepts to sound natural. It's not do a mistake, it's make a mistake. And it's not do a vaccine, it's get vaccinated. Actually mixing these specific ones up is probably the single clearest marker of a non-native speaker.
And whatever you do, don't try to force logic here, especially with verbs of state. Take know versus find out. Know is a state of being. It's not an event. You can't get known something. So if you want to express the exact moment a piece of information finally clicked or arrived in your brain, you absolutely must use find out.
All right, let's jump to Section 3, navigating nouns and adjectives. We're looking at uncountables and some hidden rules here.
Now, what's really fascinating here is how common academic nouns just completely break the rules you might expect them to follow. Words like research, evidence, advice, and news, they have no plural, and they never ever take an a or an ant. They demand a singular verb and really specific quantifiers, like a large amount of data. And if you actually need a countable idea, you have to switch the noun out entirely. So you can't say a research. You have to say a study or project.
Then we have the way we join two nouns together. While Russian normally links two nouns with the genitive case, using words like of to show belonging, English heavily prefers a simple noun plus noun pattern for technical descriptions. And crucially, the order is completely reversed. The thing being described actually comes second. So while the cancer of the liver is grammatically correct, it sounds super foreign and overly clinical. Liver cancer is the natural native phrasing.
Oh, and here's a sneaky one for you. We all learned the classic rule, adverbs describe verbs, right? But what about verbs like look, sound, feel, or seem? In a sentence like, the results look strange, nothing is actually being done. The verb is just acting like an equal sign. Because of that, you must use an adjective to describe the subject. Saying the results look strangely is a super common mistake, but it's definitely a mistake.
And this exact same logic applies to situations too. Have you ever caught yourself saying,
It is easily to explain? Yeah, that is one of the most persistent B2 errors out there. Mostly because the Russian phrase looks like an adverb form. But in English, the adjective easy describes the whole situation, not the manner of the action itself. So it just has to be, it is easy to explain.
Moving right along to Section 4, tenses and time periods, or the showdown between finished versus unfinished time.
When you're trying to decide between tenses, remember that it's not about how long ago something happened. It's really a philosophy of finished versus unfinished time. Past simple is for a completely finished time period, like a specific event in 2019. Present perfect, on the other hand, is for an unfinished period that connects a past event, say something starting back in the early 2000s, directly to the present moment right now.
Now, the massive trap for Russian speakers here is using a present tense for a situation that started in the past and is still continuing today. If you translate «Я знаю его 5 лет» directly, you get «I know him for 5 years», which is just grammatically wrong. You have to say «I have known him for 5 years». Actually, think of the Russian word «уже» as your ultimate cheat code. It is a huge, flashing signal that English is going to require a perfect form.
Okay, Section 5, the logic of English questions. Let's talk about word order and how to answer negatives.
So, in direct questions, we invert the subject and the auxiliary verb. We know that. But consider indirect questions. Those are the ones starting with phrases like, I wonder, or could you tell me? When you form an indirect question, you have to drop the helping verb like do or did and go right back to standard statement order. Literally no inversion at all. It's just, I wonder why she didn't ask.
Now picture this. Imagine you're in a conversation and someone asks you this exact negative question. You don't smoke, do you? Think about it for a second. What is your absolute instinctual response if you are a non-smoker? If you were speaking Russian, you might say yes to confirm their negative statement. Like, yes, you are right, I don't. But in English, that is impossible. Yes and no follow the actual fact of reality, completely ignoring the phrasing of the question. If the fact is negative, the answer is no. So you'd say, no, I don't. Honestly, the safest habit you can build is to never answer with a bare yes or no. Just always add the short tag, like, no, I don't, and it'll force your brain to stay consistent.
Finally, we arrive at Section 6. Think in patterns. This is your new strategy for fluency.
Here's your new game plan, and I promise you this is truly the ultimate solution to breaking through that B2 plateau once and for all. Moving forward, when you're reading an English text, stop just looking for individual vocabulary words. Read for patterns instead. Hunt for those light verbs attached to nouns or those noun plus noun compounds. Mark the whole phrases and copy them directly into your notes as complete unbreakable blocks. I really want to leave you with this incredibly powerful thought directly from the source material. Rules explain errors after the fact, phrases prevent them. Seriously, stop trying to piece together individual words and start memorizing natural phrases as a whole. So here's my final question for you to chew on. What is the one unbreakable phrase you're going to memorize today to completely prevent your next translation mistake?